Hi, Carly. Thank you so much for coming on Thrival Nutrition Podcast. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me. This is super exciting.
Yes, I'm so glad you're here. Talking about Hashimoto's. I feel like your specialty.
Yes, I've definitely had a lot of experience with Hashimoto's personally and in helping other people kind of manage their Hashimoto's and figure it out. And it has been a wild ride.
That's awesome. So just first introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Johnson Brawner. I'm a functional nutrition coach in Austin, Texas, and a Hashimoto's advocate. I work with people in Austin and around the country to meet their health goals, whether that's weight loss or autoimmune symptom reduction, or just trying to live a more balanced life.
Right, right. So tell us your background. Okay, so you've obviously never always had Hashimoto's. So what led up to that?
Yeah. So my background, it's interesting because I never thought I would be in the nutrition space or the functional wellness space. It wasn't really on my radar until I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So I can go into kind of my life before generally, I can go into what I feel like led up to me being diagnosed with Hashimoto's and caused Hashimoto's. Do you want kind of a mixture of two of
A
the both?
mixture, right? Because a part of your lifestyle, I'm sure, kind of led you up to that. So yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit of both.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little background and then talk about my diagnosis. So 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And before that, I was living in Los Angeles. I was a very normal young 20s girl working for a startup, living in Venice Beach and just living the beach life, eating at all the good restaurants, going out with my friends, probably drinking a little bit too much, partying, but just living that very average, fun life out in Southern California. And I can tell you now that I was a sugar addict. My blood sugar was totally out of control. I had no idea what real food was. I was eating what I thought was healthy, which was very low fat, high carbohydrate. I never looked at ingredients in food. I just focused on labels, cooking all my food in canola oil, low fat yogurt. And I didn't realize it, but I was really sustaining on carbohydrates, coffee, and sugar. And didn't see why that was a problem until I started getting really itchy skin. And I didn't know what was going on. My legs especially were really itchy. Went to the dermatologist. They couldn't figure out what it was. Then my next symptom was fatigue. I just didn't have a lot of energy. I was working partially from home, partially from the office, and started working from home a lot more. Then I figured out, well, I'm kind of working from bed a lot. What's going on here? And then I started having trouble swallowing. And that's a really common Hashimoto symptom. So I went to an ENT. I went to all these specialists and no one could give me a direct answer. It was take these proton pump inhibitors. Here's cortisone for your skin. And finally I got to this point where I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. So I went to my doctor and I said, I need tests done for X, Y, and Z because something is wrong with me and we have to figure it out. The anxiety from knowing there was an unsolved problem really got to me and I just knew I had to do something. So I got 5 different tests run. I demanded them actually, and one of them was a full thyroid panel. And it came back that I had Hashimoto's. My TSH, which should be between 1 and 8 or 0 and 8 in a standard lab test, was 150. I was in the thick of Hashimoto's in a big flare. And that's how I figured out that I had Hashimoto's. I had an autoimmune disease. And it was actually a relief at that time because I felt like there was a reason why I was experiencing so many symptoms.
Right, right. I go back to that because I know that you quickly hit on the lab ranges, and I feel like yours was obviously astronomical, obvious thing, something was going on. But
Yeah.
like you said, conventional ranges are from 0 to 8, and so people that go to the doctor and they may have similar symptoms, and they may think like, "Wow, this lines up with thyroid issues." But let's say they don't have too much of a crazy number like yours, but it's
Yeah.
still out of range. Is there a specific range for you for different thyroid measurements?
So conventional medicine is usually between 1 and 8, and that is super high. And functional medicine usually likes to see thyroid labs between 1 and 3 and 4 at the highest. So between 1 and 3 is usually where people feel their absolute best. And again, it's not about fitting into these wide conventional thyroid ranges. It's about figuring out where you feel your best, and that's different for everyone. So
Right.
for me, my TSH at a 1, I might feel great. Someone else might be a 2 and feel great. And then the other labs are as important as well. TSH isn't the most important. We need to look at T3, T4, a full thyroid panel.
Yeah, and I love that you said you demanded it.
I did. I wasn't getting the care that I needed. I didn't have a doctor who was digging and rooting for me. So I really had to do it myself. And it's one of the reasons that I left conventional medicine upon my diagnosis. So I just didn't feel supported.
Was there backlash? Like if you asked before and they were like, no, I don't feel like you need that test.
I just wasn't taken seriously, and I didn't know what to ask for. I got to the point where I was so scared that I did research. What is this itchy skin about? I thought maybe I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, because that's a big symptom of that. I saw thyroid. People with thyroid have really dry, itchy skin. So, and a few other things, which I now can't remember off the top of my head, but I asked for 5 different tests. I just wanted to clear my head, make sure I didn't have them. And then one did come back. I had Hashimoto's.
Nice. And so you're managing that with your diet and lifestyle. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So the diagnosis for me was really just the beginning. It's been a couple years of trial and error since then. I ended up leaving my endocrinologist, who told me that I couldn't change my state of health, my autoimmunity, with any dietary changes, with any lifestyle changes. She just told me, take this medication, which was levothyroxine at the time, and this is all you can do for your health. And that just didn't sit well with me, especially after reading so many accounts on different websites about women who got their life back, who had energy again, who felt like themselves again after changing their diet, after going the functional route and healing their adrenals and working on their hormone patterns. And so I decided I'm going to leave conventional medicine. I'm going to work with a naturopath. I want to see their perspective, and I want to see if I can feel good again. Everyone deserves to feel good, and so many women with thyroid issues don't. So I'm really lucky that I found a good doctor who tested all my organ systems. He tested my liver, he tested my adrenals, he tested my hormones, and got a big picture of what was going on with my health, not just my thyroid. And so we started working on other things, like my adrenals, my circadian rhythms, my liver function. And that was when my thyroid started to heal. We weren't necessarily targeting my thyroid itself. We were targeting other organ systems, and that impacted my thyroid health.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think we're in it. So we're in nutrition. So we understand the power of food, but there's so many doctors that still think that, of just like, no diet's going to be able to, even like with diabetes, no diet's going to be able to do it. You have it. You kind of have to just live with it.
Yeah. And diet was huge for me. We didn't just test my organ systems and try to optimize those. I did an elimination diet where I learned that grains and gluten were really hard for me to digest, and I didn't react well to them. Dairy at that time, same boat. I gave that up for a long time. And then just little things like egg whites, and a few other foods that I learned were actually contributing to my autoimmunity, to my inflammation. And I was able to cut those out and kind of get back on track.
So you did an elimination diet. You didn't do like a food sensitivity test or anything?
I didn't. My doctor at the time was much more, he trusts elimination diets a lot more. So I did a 60-day elimination diet, very similar to the autoimmune protocol diet, AIP, but that was 4 years ago. And the reintroductions were really interesting, and I got to learn a lot. I won't say that I was perfect after I learned what I should be eliminating, but it was a good starting point. I wish I was more perfect, but it was a good starting point for me.
Yeah. And so, I see what you eat now on Instagram, and it's amazing. Yeah. So is there like a baseline or some foundations that you always follow with your meal?
Yeah. As much as I don't like to label how I eat, I think my diet generally falls into more of a paleo template diet, where I keep grains very low and limited. I don't eat processed food anymore. I eat high quality protein and vegetables and fat at every meal. I've found over time that's what makes me feel my best. And so I continue to eat that way.
And how is, well, eating healthy and things, how do you not eat processed foods? Is there, when
Yeah.
you're traveling, because I know you travel a lot and like you're on the go, so like how do you manage that?
Yeah. So for the last couple years, it's been all about meal prep, and it was a learning process. I was horrible in the kitchen for so long, but once I learned that um, preparing my own food and eating at home was the best way to nourish my body, I committed to that. And so every Sunday we would cook food, and my husband and I would trade off cooking. Whoever cooked didn't have to do the dishes.
Nice.
And we got into a good routine. Recently, in the last, I'd say 4 to 5 months, we actually have a meal prep chef come to our house and cook meals for us. So that's been really nice. It ties into actual Hashimoto's flare I had about a year and a half ago, where I had a flare from 6 months on the road traveling in Asia, came back, my Hashimoto's was not in a good place. And I went AIP, autoimmune protocol, for 5 months on the elimination phase to try to get back into a good place, reduce inflammation, bring my antibodies down. And I really burnt out cooking food for 5 months, every single meal at home. And so we hired a chef to come every Sunday. She preps some of our food. She preps our food. We just grab it from the refrigerator. It's really nice. So we've done a mixture of both things in trying to eat healthy and in making sure that we are eating real food. But right now we're definitely enjoying having a helper at home.
That's awesome. I'm a little
Yeah.
jealous with that because I feel the same way, especially having kids. They're always looking for
Yes.
snacks or looking, and I feel like I'm always in the kitchen sometimes. But
Yeah.
I mean, you pay now or pay later.
Totally. And I can't imagine what it would be like having kids to prep food for. So I give you moms so much credit.
With you going to Asia, do you feel like your flare came from maybe being just a little bit more lax with your diet, or was it the stress of traveling, or?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And what I've boiled it down to was I was living there for about 6 months after my husband and I got married. And until the last year and a half, I knew I was sensitive to gluten, but I did not know how sensitive I was. And when I was living in Thailand, there's a lot of people who don't speak English who work at restaurants. And I would try to ask if it was gluten free, and I would try to make sure it looked gluten free. But I think there was too many gluten exposures for my body to handle. And I came back and my anti-gliadin tests were like off the charts, and my everything indicated gluten sensitivity hardcore. So I have been eating almost like a celiac person who has celiac disease since then, and it's been really helpful. I know that's how I need to carry forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know it's harder when you travel, like relying, especially to different countries, of the communication barrier and things. And you
Totally.
gotta try your best.
Exactly. And I've had a few times where I've eaten gluten on trips. Like you said, my husband and I love to travel, and we do travel a lot, but I bring activated charcoal, I bring vitamin C, I bring things to help reduce the inflammation or the reaction to gluten if I think I was exposed.
Nice. And then what are some of your go-to foods for Hashimoto's? Things that you like can't live without?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say salmon is a protein we have a lot. We have a lot of seafood. I would like to say organ meat is on my list, but I don't do it as much as I should. Cruciferous veggies, a lot of people have this weird notion that cruciferous veggies are harmful for thyroid, but I think they're actually very helpful, not for thyroid specifically, but for entire body, especially detoxification. So I have a lot of veggies. What else? What are my go-to foods? Sardines, avocados.
I was about to say like quick foods. So, avocados are always a good one. They're pretty quick.
Yes. And if I need a quick breakfast, sardines, avocados, some hot sauce if I want to, maybe some cauliflower rice. That's always a really easy breakfast. I do a lot of soups in the morning as well, just that are easy on my digestion, which is usually a bone broth base with lots of veggies blended in, maybe topped with some animal protein. But I would say there aren't like selenium's really good. But so I do Brazil nuts here and there for that. I don't have foods necessarily that I go to just for my thyroid. I try to eat a balanced diet, try to mix it up and get as many nutrients as possible for my microbiome, and just keeping it exciting in the kitchen.
Yeah, I always feel like you have a really good variety, like different,
Oh,
like, a
thanks.
variety of vegetables, even in just one meal, you know.
Yeah, we try to go to the farmer's market as much as possible and buy seasonal. Of course, that doesn't always happen. And when we're
Yeah,
out of town on weekends, it can be hard. I'll just pop over to Whole Foods, but that is a goal, buying what's in season right now, buying meat and produce from local farms. We definitely try to make that happen.
that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you go over your 5 pillars of health?
Yes. So when I work with people, I work on 5 different things. Regardless of goals, I like to touch on these 5 things. So they are: real food and nutrition is pillar number 1. Movement is pillar number 2. Number 3 is stress and sleep. Number 4 is reducing toxin exposure. And number 5 is community, mental health, and happiness. And for me, in my healing and through all my research I've done in functional medicine and holistic health, I think that those 5 things build the foundation of a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle. And so I try to help people cultivate a good relationship with each of those things and understand why they're important in the wellness world.
That's awesome. So yeah, I was just about to say, so I know food is a big part of managing Hashimoto's. And so
Yeah,
diving into other different lifestyle things, stress and sleep, definitely I feel like are overlooked. What
absolutely.
are some lifestyle things that help you in those 5 pillars of health, that
Yeah.
also help you manage Hashimoto's pretty successfully?
Yeah, so really all of them. Movement has been big for me. When I've gone through my true healing, trying to recover phases, either when I was diagnosed or when I've had a flare up, walking has been amazing. And it's such a good way to get outside, get sunlight in my eyes, on my skin, get some vitamin D, and nature is so therapeutic. So that has always been huge for me. And then when I'm in a little bit better state with circadian rhythms and recovery, I do hit workouts, I do spin, I like to go to the gym. But when I am in those places where my energy might be lower, I can feel my autoimmunity kicking up, I take it back. And I just relax a little bit more, don't work out as hard. So that is kind of how I address my movement and my exercise.
Nice.
And then for sleep and stress, these are the most underrated part of health, I think. When we say diet and exercise, I feel like we're leaving out these 2 huge parts, which are sleep and stress. And most people don't want to hear about them. When I work with
I know, I
clients,
totally understand.
right? When I work with clients or when I go do wellness, corporate wellness presentations, everyone kind of like rolls their eyes when I talk about sleep and stress, but they're so important for recovery, for gut health, for hormone regulation, so many different reasons. We need to optimize our sleep and manage our stress. So that is really big for me. When my stress kicks up, I never feel good. I don't digest food as well. And I have to actively start meditating more, go floating in float tanks, just journal, try to calm down, get back to my baseline, because I know that when there's a lot of stress around, things can quickly escalate with
Yes.
my autoimmunity.
Always. I always tell people you can eat the healthiest diet, but if you can't get your stress in check, it's ultimately, I mean, you're still gonna be, at risk for chronic diseases and other issues.
Absolutely. And sleep too. I mean, sleep
Yeah.
is so important for maintaining proper body weight and even losing weight. I don't think people realize that a bad night's sleep, the next day you're basically in a pre-diabetic state and your insulin resistance is higher than it was the day before when you had proper sleep. So sleep is so important, and it's 1/3 of Americans struggle with sleep. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about that isn't related to food, because I think it's so important. But we take our sleep very seriously at my house. We have our blackout curtains. We turn the lights down around 7 p.m. We both wear our like blue blocking glasses, and drink magnesium tea before bed. It's really nice to have a partner who's on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of the times are watching TV, like are just thinking about our society and our bedtime routines. I mean, even, you know, being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've seen like sleep when you're dead kind of thing, like pull an
Yes.
all-nighter, and it's just not sustainable, and it harms our health worse than eating junk sometimes.
Totally. And I always say the two biggest things that are disrupting our sleep are our home environments and our culture, the sleep when I'm dead culture, and then our home environments, which are filled with artificial lights, blue lights, screens. All those things contribute to a decreased quality of sleep and length of sleep.
Yes. Do
Yeah.
you take any other supplements like for sleep? I know you said magnesium tea.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I've never had major problems sleeping. And so I haven't needed to supplement. But I actually recommend people getting outside for better sleep in the morning and then in the peak of the afternoon. No contacts or sunglasses, really getting that bright light in their eyes to help our body's circadian rhythm regulate, help our bodies know what time it is and start either winding up with energy and cortisol or winding down. That can really help. So magnesium, getting outside 1 to 2 times a day for 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll recommend GABA for sleeping just because that's really calming. And then another thing with some people, they'll wake up in the middle of the night because their blood sugar is low and their cortisol will spike up. So eating a little snack before bed, I know some people are opposed to that because they want the digestion to get a break. But if you're waking up because your blood sugar is low, having that snack before before bedtime is totally worth it.
Yes, that's the classic 2 a.m. wake up. And it's funny, people are like, oh, I guess I do wake up every night at 2 a.m. And it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's certain things in our society I feel like are so normal. They're not normal, but they're just like,
yes, they've been normalized.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And poor sleep is one of them. Irregular periods and painful periods is another one of those things. There's so many.
Yes. And so your last pillar, that was really cool. I mean, I definitely am familiar with sleep and stress, but community health and happiness. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Community mental health and happiness, I think it is so important for a variety of reasons. One, people who have community, who feel supported by positive people in their life, they live longer. So it's a longevity tool. It's important for longevity. When we look in the blue zones, the zones where people live the longest in the world, they all are living in community. They feel supported. They have people they've known since they were little, who they're 80 years old with now, sitting on their porch, or they're friends with. Yeah, it's amazing. So community is really important for so many reasons, and it contributes to happiness. It contributes to a better mental health state. So encouraging people to have friends, to reach out to family, to have face-to-face contact with people in their life is really important. Not only just for longevity, but also for eating and diet. I know when people don't have love in their life, they look to fill it in other ways. So it's really all connected, and the 5 pillars don't stand alone. They all are intertwined. And when one is lacking, we can see where another might be out of balance.
Right. And I love social media so much because it led me to meeting you and so many other people in my life. But I feel like sometimes we're so stuck behind a screen, we forgot that human connection face to face and in person, and it's so important to get out from behind the screen, even though you can find great community support in like Facebook groups and so many different things, but there is something different when you are drinking coffee with someone you've known for 80 years, which is awesome.
I totally agree with the social media interruptions where we feel like we're getting a fill from that, but it's really creating a void. I've noticed that in my own life, but also with people I work with. It can be amazing, but it can be destructive as well. And I've tried recently to limit the amount of time I spend on social media, not necessarily for that reason, but just 'cause I've tracked how much time recently I've spent on my phone, and I'm like, this is not okay. So I use the Mindful app to show me how much screen time I've had on my phone, and I was like, 3 hours a day is too much. So I'm starting to implement different regulations and different times when using my phone is okay and when it's not.
Right. And I know it's harder, like, especially for me and you, my business, everything is online. And I find myself definitely like spending a lot of the day just looking at a screen, my computer for work or whatever. And it's like, that's just so bad.
Yes. And another pillar I want to fit in, I don't want to have 6 pillars because it seems like too many, but is nature, and not for exercise, not to get outside to move your body necessarily, but just to be outside is so healing. And we are animals meant to spend more time outside than we do currently. I think the average person spends 90% of their time inside, which is so much time. I mean, most people get outside when they're walking to their car in the morning and when they're walking to their car in the evening after work.
Yes.
And our bodies are meant for more time. Biologically, we are meant for more time outside. So I want that to be a pillar. And it's something I encourage all my clients to do, is to spend more time outside every single day. Make it a priority because it's really helpful. It's really important. It's so mood boosting. I know my husband and I try to take a walk together outside every single day. And on the weekends, we try to spend most of the day outside. It's kind of hard in Texas sometimes, but
Right.
yeah.
No, even when I feel really stressed, like that's something that always helps me kind of get back and get grounded. And so like taking a bike ride, which is better than walking sometimes because you do get a little bit of breeze when you're riding.
Yeah, it's so true.
In Texas heat. But it's definitely a must. And I can even feel it if I'm like, wow, I've been inside all day. I can feel just, like I just need fresh air and sunlight and just start thriving.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you guys have your boat and it always looks so beautiful outside. And that's one way just to experience nature and get in the water. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So where can we find you?
So I am at Frolic and Flow on Instagram. And then my website is frolicandflow.me.com, or I think it's frolicandflow.me. Erase the .com part. And those are my 2 main points of contact.
Awesome. And do you see people one-on-one or virtually?
Yeah, I do. I see people one-on-one in Austin and virtually. I've started doing group coaching as well. And always looking for more people to work with. So if anyone's out there with Hashimoto's, let's connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much.